Ninth question. Higher organisms have resorted to sexual reproduction in spite of its complexity. Why? Higher organisms means higher plants or higher animals is what they are talking about. They have resorted to sexual reproduction. The reason is higher organisms or higher plants means they are better evolved. Why are they better evolved? Because they underwent variations and these variations have helped them survive. So it is all interlinked. So why have they resorted to sexual reproduction? Because sexual reproduction results into variations. Variations help in better adaptations, and if the organism is better adapted, the chances of its survival and evolution are more. So, chances of survival and evolution are more. So, everything is related to this variation. 10th question. Question number 10 reads, explain why meiosis and gametogenesis are always interlinked. What is meiosis? Meiosis is reductional division. What is happening in gametogenesis? The gamete mother cell has to produce gametes. The gamete mother cell is diploid and the gametes which are produced, they are haploid. So, if a diploid mother cell has to produce haploid gamete, then it has to undergo meiosis, that is reductional division. So, if gametogenesis is taking place, the division which is involved, one of the mitosis also takes place, but one division which has to take place for gamete formation is meiosis. So, meiosis, whether you talk individually or as a part of gametogenesis, is a reductional division, and gametogenesis has to produce haploid gametes. So, they are interlinked basically. Question number 11. Identify each part in a flowering plant and write whether it is a haploid or a diploid or a structure or part. They have given ovary, anther, egg, pollen, male gamete, and zygote. Now, we have to see whether they are haploid or diploid. Ovary is a part of the flower, and we know that all cells of the body of an organism are coming from zygote. So, here let us understand this, or let us say, as we are talking about sexual reproduction, the male and female gametes, they form a diploid zygote. And when this zygote undergoes mitosis, that gives rise to an organism. That means all the cells of that organism have undergone only mitotic divisions. That means the number of chromosomes in all these cells would be diploid. There are some cells which are capable of undergoing meiosis. That means they can produce haploid cells, but they themselves are diploid. So, ovary, it is a part of the plant or flower, it will have diploid cells. Same is the case with anther, so it will also be diploid because it is capable of producing pollen grain by the gametogenesis. Eggs, these are gametes, that means the mother cells have undergone meiosis to produce haploid eggs. So, eggs are haploid. Pollen grains are also formed as a result of meiosis, so they are also haploid. Male gamete, pollen grain has haploid nucleus and this nucleus divides by mitosis. So, it will also produce haploid male gamete. How is the zygote formed? It is right here. The two gametes, haploid and haploid gametes, fuse to form a diploid zygote. So, zygote will be diploid. So, these things were asked and we were to identify whether they are haploid or diploid. Twelfth question. Define external fertilization and mention its disadvantages. External fertilization. Simple, when fertilization takes place outside the body is external fertilization, but because we have to give a definition of it, we will say when the male and female gametes are released in water, male and female gametes are released in water and they fuse outside. Such fertilization is known as external fertilization. What is the risk? Male female gametes are released in water, fertilization is taking place outside, zygotes are formed in water. What is the safety of these zygotes? They are going to be either free floating or they may just remain attached somewhere, but they are in open environment. So, they are highly vulnerable. So, there is only one disadvantage, that they are highly vulnerable to external conditions. What kind of conditions? The conditions could be just physical conditions like temperature. Suppose the temperature rises and the pond dries up, those zygotes will die. Temperature increases too much, that damages their proteins, they again might die. Temperature decreases, they freeze and might die. So, physical conditions. Sometimes the pH changes, sometimes some chemicals, toxic substances enter that environment, so those will cause damage. And biological agents, the predators, the other organisms, they would feed on them. So, biological factors also, the predators. So, there could be physical conditions which damage them, or there could be biological conditions which could damage them. So, they are highly vulnerable to external conditions. This was question number 12. Now, let us take 13th question. Differentiate between a zoospore and a zygote. Zoospore and zygote. Zoospores are formed as a motile structure. They are motile. That means they move. Normally they have flagella. Like one simple zoospore could be like this. So, it has flagella, and with the flagella it moves from one place. Zygotes are invariably non-motile. There are some exceptions, but they are non-motile. That means they do not move from one place to another, they do not have flagella. So here they have flagella. In case of zygote, there is no flagella. Zoospores are produced as a result of asexual reproduction, whereas zygotes are produced as a result of sexual reproduction. So these are the differences between a zoospore and a zygote. 14th question is again differentiate between gametogenesis and embryogenesis. This is 14. Gametogenesis is formation of gametes. So in case of gametogenesis, we can say that diploid gamete mother cell, it undergoes meiosis to form haploid gametes. This is gametogenesis. The process of gamete formation is gametogenesis. In case of sperm production, it will be called spermatogenesis. In case of egg production, we will call it oogenesis. Now, these gametes which are formed, the male and the female gametes, they fuse and a diploid zygote is formed. This zygote will undergo mitosis to form an embryo. So this fusion of gametes and formation of embryo is known as embryogenesis. So both are the steps of sexual reproduction, but gamete formation is gametogenesis. After the gametes fuse to form a zygote and embryo, that stage will be called, or those steps will be called embryogenesis. Question number 15 is describe the post-fertilization changes in a flower. After fertilization has taken place, what all things happen? What all changes take place? After fertilization, all floral whorls fall off except ovary. All other things will fall off. We discussed when we were talking about these changes in the earlier segment that in certain cases sepals may remain attached to the fruit, which we see in case of brinjal and tomatoes. Then in that case those sepals will also remain, but invariably everything falls off except for the ovary. We start seeing a change in the size of the ovary. So ovary size increases. These are the things which are visible from outside. What is happening inside? Zygote is changing into an embryo. So it gives rise to embryo. Zygote produces the embryo. Ovule will change into the seed, and the complete ovary will change into the fruit. So again, these are not the detailed changes that we have written here, because our first chapter is only about the basic things based on reproduction. But when you study the entire chapter of reproduction in flowering plants, we will be able to know the sequential changes which take place. Like Zygote into embryo is not like one step. Zygote divides into two cells, upper cell gives rise to some parts of the embryo, the lower cell produces some other parts. So, that is the detailed part. But basically what all changes are taking place? Zygote into embryo, ovule into seed and ovary into fruit. All floral parts have fallen off after fertilization. And now this ovary, which has changing into the fruit, ripens, and animals start eating this fruit because it is juicy or pulpy, and in this complete process they help in dispersal of these seeds. 16th question is, what is a bisexual flower? Collect 5 bisexual flowers from your neighborhood and with the help of your teacher find out their common and scientific names. Now, you can look around yourselves. Most of the flowers which we see, they are bisexual. That means one flower has both the reproductive structures, that is pistil and stamen. Now, just because we cannot just go out together and collect 5 flowers, I am just going to show you one flower and its parts so that you understand the basic structures. This is question number 16. In our vicinity, the most common flower which we find are either roses or China rose, that is hibiscus. So, let us see the China rose one. All the floral whorls are attached to a part of the flower which is known as thalamus, and there are 4 whorls in a complete flower. And as we are talking about a bisexual flower, that means both reproductive parts we need to draw. We are going from the inner to outer part. The innermost part is the female reproductive part, which is known as pistil. It has 3 parts. The top is normally swollen, it is called stigma. Then there is a style, and the lower part is ovary. In case of hibiscus, we do not see all these structures because this complete thing is covered by a tube. But we have drawn it as if we have cut that complete tube like structure, and this tube like structure is formed by fusion of the filaments of the various stamen. This tube is known as staminal tube. In case of hibiscus, we find that the stigma which is visible is not single, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. There are 5 stigmas which come out. So, there are 5 in case of hibiscus. In other flowers, we may find only 1 stigma, and these anthers can also be slightly different. Then, let us come to the third whorl, that is the petals. Petals are brightly colored to attract the insects or animals for pollination, and the outermost whorl is a green part. In case of hibiscus, again these 3 green parts are not visible like this, the sepals. In case of hibiscus, the sepals are in the form of a cup, and they would be visible in this manner because this flower is open flower. Assume that we have cut it into pieces, and that is why they are visible like this, but the sepals or calyx is fused at the bottom, only these tips are open. And in hibiscus, there is one more structure outside this. There are some delicate green structures which is known as epicalyx. Again, this is exclusively for China rose. So, in China rose there are a couple of peculiar things. There are 5 stigmas, all anthers are free, but their filaments, most of the filaments have fused to form this tube, and colored petals and sepals. Calyx is in the form of a cup, but here we have shown it opened up because we wanted to show the open flower, and there is an additional structure. So, this bulging part is the anther, and these thread like structures are the filaments. In case of other flowers, maybe the flower of rose, if you want to see, in most of the flowers on the thalamus, the ovary, here we can draw only one stigma, and the anthers, they have their individual filaments, not like China rose. In China rose, they have fused to form one bundle, which we call monoadelphous condition. In other cases, here would be the, let us use the other color, this would be a petal, the next petal, third, and the sepals are those green things which are visible here. So, in this case, all the floral parts or whorls are visible separately, whereas in case of China rose, you see this dotted thing around that upper or middle part, but we do not see the ovary and style, it is going through that tube. In case of hibiscus, Rosa sinensis, that is China rose, and rose is Rosa indica. So, there can be many flowers around you, and just look at those flowers and try to identify these various parts. 17th question, examine a few flowers of any cucurbit plant and try to identify staminate and pistillate flowers. In this family, we find separate male and female flowers. So, again, if it is pistillate, it would have only female reproductive part. If it is staminate, it will have only male reproductive part. How are they different from the bisexual flowers? Unisexual flowers have only one sex organ, whereas bisexual flowers have both. 18th question is, why are offsprings of oviparous animals at a greater risk as compared to the offsprings of viviparous animals? Now, we just now talked about this oviparous. This is question number 18. Oviparous. Oviparous means egg laying. When the animal has laid the eggs are in the open environment. Again, if they are in open environment, they are exposed to all various conditions, physical conditions, chemical conditions and predators. So, the chances of their survival are less. Reason? They have to face external conditions like physical, here we can write temperature, desiccation, like if it dries up, chemical like pH or some toxins, and biological like predators. Now, if the organism is open or vulnerable to all these external changes, its chances of survival are very less. Whereas, in case of viviparous, the organism or the baby organism or the fetus or embryo grows inside the mother's body. So, the embryo is protected within the mother's If it is inside the mother's body, then it is not exposed to all those external conditions. So, chances of its survival are more. So, the question was, why are offsprings of oviparous animals are at greater risk as compared to organisms of viviparous animals. So, now these 18 questions we have solved. In your neighborhood, try to find out different types of flowers and see if you can get hold of some unisexual flowers. Try to identify whether it is pistillate or staminate, but most of the flowers which we see around us, they are bisexual flowers. Just try to dissect that flower and see the various parts of it. So, this completes our first chapter of this unit, that is reproduction in organisms.